So this is my 56-degree wedge, and this is the sole of my wedge. Now we've got different parts of the sole. We've got the leading edge, the trailing edge, the bounce, the toe and the heel. And how we use each of those parts of the club can give you lots of different shots around the green. So I'm going to show you how you can really get to know your wedge and learn some new shots around the greens. So for this first shot, we're talking about the sole, the bounce. This is the part right in the middle. And this is the part of the club that you're probably going to try and use the most. And I'm going to be using that when I want to hit kind of a standard mid-flight pitch shot, which I'm going to demonstrate here. So we need to make sure that in order to use that part of the club, we need to be making sure that we set up with the club shaft pretty neutral. And the key thing is that we return it pretty neutral. No good setting up, nicely here, but then driving the handle forwards and having the shaft length that far forwards. So the first thing I would be doing is I'd be setting the golf club in behind the ball, making sure that club shaft is nice and neutral. A little bit of forward shaft lean is absolutely fine. And then I'm going to be building my stance around that. Now notice how the buttons on my shirt are above the ball, as is the top of my grip. So I've got those three things in a line: ball, grip, buttons. That's my key to the setup. And then what I'm going to make sure that I do in this motion is have a pretty wide swing with the club. I certainly don't want to be breaking those wrists and adding too much wrist set, because I've got to get rid of that. So the more I add, the harder it is to get rid of it. So I'm going to be using a little bit, but I'm going to be keeping the club fairly wide, making sure that I deliver the club back to this nice vertical position, and then rotating through with my body and feeling that there's a little bit of movement in that lead wrist. You'll also notice that I've got the blast sensor on my grip. It's going to give me attack angle. I want this to be slightly downward, so a minus number, but not too much. So that's going to give me that mid-flight. It's actually going to be, I'll take that one. And as you can see there on the blast data, that's exactly what I want. Slightly descend, -5 in the green zone. That's exactly what I want. So if I want to hit that mid-flighted, high spinning pitch, use the sole or the bounce of the golf club. Let's say I now found myself in a situation where I actually want a lower ball flight. I kind of want it closer to the ground and then rolling more out to the flag. That's a safer shot. Well, now I actually want to be using probably the leading edge of the golf club. So how do we use the leading edge? Well, we need two things. We need the club shaft length forwards, and we need the golf club on a more descending blow now. So again, we've got the blast on the club. When I hit this shot, I'm expecting a downward attack angle, but more severe. So, certainly more than -5. So all we're gonna do is just change the setup. So I'm gonna be taking my setup that we had before, and I'm gonna be walking forward of the golf ball. That's my buttons, my belt buckle, my feet, and I'm gonna be keeping the handle almost where it was relative to my feet. So you can see now that I've got a significant amount of club shaft lean. So that's going to do two things. It's going to take loft off the club, which is perfect. And it's also going to mean that I have now got that steeper attack angle, provided I don't sort of back up or back out of it. In terms of the motion, I'm going to try and take as much wrist out of it as I can. So I'm going to keep the wrist very passive. And I'm going to feel like as I rotate through, I'm going to feel like the club head stays kind of behind my lead arm. I'm going to feel like my hands are leading it, and you can see how my lead wrist is almost in this arched position. But the key thing here is we're using the leading edge, so I'm going to be feeling, a little bit more of that ground contact. We get all told all the time that leading edge is bad, use the bounce, but in certain situations it's good, and this would be one of those. So let's see if we can hit one. We should see a lower ball flight, we should see that steeper attack angle. So there's my setup. Let's go ahead and hit it. Much lower ball flight. I've underhit it, but that's fine. That's user error, but the shot came out much lower. And you can see there that, yeah, the attack angle there, where you can see that -12.3, so really, really steep, and definitely a different type of ground contact. So leading edge, used correctly, great for those lower shots when you want to keep it close to the ground. So what about this situation here? Clearly I can't go low. Mid, possibly, but it's probably going to roll past. I kind of need that higher shot and stop the ball through trajectory. So for that, we're looking now at the trailing edge, so the back of the golf club. So how do we use that? Well, what we have to do here is we have to open the club face, rotate it away from the target. What that does is it pushes that trailing edge lower to the ground, so that's what's going to be making contact, and it raises that leading edge up. Now, because of the way that the golf club is designed and the way we play this shot, the lie has to be good. So if this was a really bare lie, difficult to play it. So if you're looking to use that trailing edge, first thing you have to do is just assess the lie and see whether you feel like it would allow for that shot. Let's say it does, how do you play it? Well, like we said, we're going to rotate the golf club away from the target, How much just depends on how much height you want. The more you rotate it, the more you're pushing that trailing edge down. And then we're going to take our grip. So when I take my normal grip, look down, the club is rotated away. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm basically going to be setting up the same as we did for when we used the bounce. Ball in the middle, club shaft nice and neutral. And again, I want to be returning the golf club to that neutral position. You start leaning it forward with an open face and you're starting to get the heel to dig in. That's a big no-no. Now the only difference would be, for this one, we probably want a little bit of wrist action, or a little bit more wrist action than we would do in that first shot that we looked at. Through the ball, I'm basically going to be using my right wrist to feel like I throw the back of the club down to hit the ground. So I'm very much feeling like I'm using my trail wrist to throw the club down. And if I do that, I can hit the ground pretty hard and I'm never ever going to take a divot. Because we're using that trailing edge, it's smooth, it's rounded, it's not going to dig. Now this is possibly the hardest shot, you know, if we're looking at which parts of the club to use, this is going to be one of the more difficult parts. I hope this goes well, let's hit a shot. If it doesn't, then this ball's going to be in the water. So face open, club shaft neutral, work it back, throw the club under, and I'm actually going to be focusing on trying to hit the ground here, using that trailing edge to skip through the grass. So we'd all hope for a really nice lie when we miss the green, we can get the club under it, hit the shot that we want, but that's not the reality, is it? Sometimes we get that, you know, the ball falls into a depression, difficult to play. So we can use the toe section of the golf club. So when we use the club such as this, we get the sole, which is, let's say, this wide. Difficult to get that under the ball. So as soon as we raise the club shaft up and get it closer to vertical, we get the toe pushed more down, and you can see that it's a very different shape. It's much easier to get the toe of the club in this form underneath the ball or to the bottom of the ball and hit a pretty successful shot. So what we're going to do is we're going to think about our normal setup, and we're just going to basically raise the club up as much as we feel comfortable and then walk in much closer. So the toe is now the only thing in contact with the ground, and it should help me play this shot a little better. We can, if we want, we can almost just push the handle forward a little bit, so we're using the toe and a little bit of the leading edge. And whilst I'm stood really, really close to the golf ball, it should help me get a better result from here. Now this is a pretty awful lie, so if I can just get this kind of on the green, out to the right and let it roll around a bit, I'd be pretty happy. And it's going to roll past, I think, but from there, not terrible. Difficult lie, but by using the toe of the club, nearly went to the water. It's okay. I'll make that coming back, don't worry. So because I use the toe of the club, smaller profile, a little bit sharper, help me with that a little better. A little softer, and that would be close. A little harder, it's in the water. Right, and lastly, the heel of the golf club. Now, 95, if not more of the shots you hit around the greens, we do not want to use the heel. If you take a look in the golf bag or at the wedges of the really good elite pros, very often they grind the heel away because they don't really want it. But in the odd situation, it can be useful. This would be one of those situations. I've landed in the bunker and it's kind of semi-plugged, the ball's sitting down. So the bounce, we don't want to use that because the bounce does exactly that. It causes the club to sort of bounce through the sand. We actually want the club to dig a little bit more under that golf ball. The heel of that golf club is a little bit sharper. It will do that job for us. So how do we use the heel? Well, we've got to get the toe up to push the heel down. So I'm actually going to stand a little bit further from the ball. I'm going to push the handle down. You can see that raises the toe up, and I'm going to open the club face a little bit. So what that does is it means that now the heel of that golf club, if I was to touch the sand, I can see that it's the heel part that's touching the sand. In my backswing, I'm going to feel like I work the club upwards, so much, much steeper, and I'm very much going to feel like I drive the heel of the golf club into the sand some 2-3 inches behind that golf ball. Not a shot that I'm going to hit a lot. From this situation, ball a little bit buried, tough bunker shot, not a lot of green to work with. I'd be very happy with getting this on the green or even just around the green to give myself a chance at, you know, holding the next putt. So heel of the golf club in this situation is going to be quite useful. Grip goes lower, face goes slightly open, and then we work the club up and feel that I drive that club into the sand behind the ball. Let's give it a go. Do you know what? I executed it actually pretty well. Big deep divot, I didn't hit it hard enough, I didn't commit. So that's again my problem, user error. Everything was correct. You see that big steep divot because the way that I used that club. I dropped it in, just need to hit it a bit harder, I need to have a little bit more confidence. So that is the situation you might want to be using the heel of the golf club.